Hi, and welcome to DrupalBrief. This is an AI-generated summary of another video, podcast, or blog post. If you want to learn more about what's being discussed here, then please go check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is the new #1 open-source development and hosting platform. It has all the functionality of the expensive platforms, but at very affordable prices. If you're looking for a new hosting provider, contact us for a demo before you get locked in. Okay, that's it. Make sure to click subscribe, and here we go.
Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to filter through the information out there and give you the essential knowledge you need nice and quickly.
Yep. And today we're diving into how Drupal site building and community collaboration are changing.
We're pulling insights from a really interesting Talking Drupal discussion that caught our attention. We think you'll find it super useful.
That's the one. It featured Darren O, who's leading the Drupal Forge project, and some other community folks. We're going to unpack really two main things they talked about: the ECA VBO module and Drupal Forge itself.
Right. Think of these as tools or maybe platforms designed to make Drupal, well, more powerful, but also easier for people like you to get into.
Exactly. The source material, that Talking Drupal YouTube transcript, gives us a great window into these.
So our mission today: figure out how these developments can streamline your workflow, maybe encourage more community contributions, and just offer new possibilities for building and managing Drupal sites.
And crucially, do it without overloading you with information. Let's get you the key takeaways.
Okay, let's jump in. First up, this module of the week they highlighted on the show, ECA VBO.
Right, ECA VBO. So the big deal here is it lets you build powerful, pretty flexible views, bulk operations, but without needing to write a whole lot of custom code.
Okay, less custom code is usually good. Who's behind it?
It was created back in May 2022 by someone called MXH. They're known for being quite active in the ECA, that's the Events, Conditions, Actions ecosystem.
And it's actively maintained. That's always a key question.
Seems so. They mentioned there's a 1.x version and a 2.x version, which supports Drupal 10.3 and even the upcoming Drupal 11.
Good. And things like security coverage, documentation.
Yep, it's got security coverage,
Yeah.
and there's documentation, a README, an example model, even a video tutorial to help you get started.
How stable is it looking?
Well, they pointed out something quite interesting. Very few open issues, like only 7, and just one actual bug reported on the current version.
For a module used on over 300 sites, that sounds pretty solid.
It does. So how it works fundamentally is it hooks into ECA events.
ECA events. Remind me.
Think of them as triggers, like when content is saved or a user logs in. ECA VBO lets you define models, basically, sets of actions that run when these events happen on items you select in a view.
Ah, okay. So you select a bunch of things in a view and then trigger a predefined action set on them using ECA.
Exactly. They specifically mentioned one event called VBO Execute 1 by 1.
What's special about that one?
That one lets you define logic that runs individually for each item you've selected.
Okay, so you could do different things to different items in the same batch based on their properties.
Precisely. The examples range from simple stuff like changing the moderation state for multiple articles.
Yeah, a classic VBO use case.
To much more complex logic,
Yeah.
maybe actions based on specific field values or site settings or, even the time of day.
Wow, okay, that opens up quite a few possibilities for automating tricky workflows. So how do you actually use it in a view?
You add a specific field to your view. It's called ECA bulk operations.
Uh-huh.
Then, when you configure that field, you just select which of your predefined ECA models should be available as actions for that view.
And how does it look to the user? Is it mixed in with standard VBO actions?
No, actually, they made a point of saying it appears as a separate group of actions in the view interface, so distinct from the regular VBO options.
Okay, that's clear. Now, adding another dependency, like the whole ECA module system, can sometimes feel like a big step. What's the argument for doing it for this kind of functionality?
That's a fair point. The thinking is it helps you centralize this kind of logic.
How so?
Well, instead of maybe having several small single-purpose modules for different bulk actions modules that might not always be well-maintained, you bring it all under the ECA umbrella.
Ah, I see. So it standardizes how you build these things.
Right. And the potential benefit down the line is simpler Drupal upgrades, fewer small, potentially problematic modules to worry about.
That makes sense. Consolidation for maintainability. Did they talk about specific complex workflows where this shines?
Yeah, they touch on things like integrations, complex content state transitions. Imagine needing to update multiple related items when one thing changes state.
Or running custom actions based on, like, a combination of different conditions.
Exactly. ECA VBO seems really well suited for orchestrating those kinds of multi-step conditional bulk processes.
And they mentioned something about recipes to make it easier.
Yes, that was a really interesting idea. The concept is you could have prepackaged recipes for common tasks.
So instead of building the ECA model yourself,
You just install the recipe and boom, the bulk operation is ready to be added to your view. Much lower barrier to entry.
that sounds genuinely useful. And then they hinted at AI.
Yeah, that was pretty forward-looking. The idea was maybe in the future you could just describe the bulk action you want in plain English, and an AI could potentially generate the basic ECA model configuration for you to start with.
Whoa. Okay, that's definitely thinking ahead. But it does raise that perennial question. Why isn't the standard VBO in core more like this already?
Yeah, they touched on that dynamic. It's the classic challenge, isn't it? Core development needs broad consensus. Stability is paramount.
So it moves maybe a bit more deliberately.
Right. While the contributed space, modules like ECA and ECA VBO, can innovate much faster. It's hard for core to always keep pace with the latest cutting-edge stuff happening in contrib.
A familiar story in Drupal. Okay, really interesting stuff on ECA VBO. Let's switch focus now to the main event from that discussion. Drupal Forge, Darren O's project.
Right, Drupal Forge. So the elevator pitch, it's basically aiming to be a marketplace for ready-made Drupal sites.
A marketplace,
Okay.
but with a deeper goal, right, about the community.
Absolutely. A core driver, as Darren O explained it, was tackling that imbalance in open source, the makers versus the takers.
Trying to find ways to better sustain the people who actually build and maintain the Drupal tools we all use. He mentioned Jay Rockowitz and the web form module challenges, I think.
Exactly. That was a key example. How do we support the maintainers? So the initial spark came from ideas like DrupalPod, simply test.me, this idea of easy demos.
Like clicking a button on a project page and getting a working demo site instantly.
Yeah. But the twist was adding a sustainable funding model. If you try a demo via Forge, like it, and then decide to buy it or host it.
A portion of that revenue goes back to support the project maintainers.
That was the core concept.
Yeah.
And it really started to take shape alongside the Drupal CMS initiative. That provided a sort of platform or context to build this vision.
So what does it look like for a user right now if I go to Drupal Forge today?
Okay, so you get instant demo sites. You can spin one up, try it out. Good for evaluation or even for training, they mentioned. Drupal training companies are already using it.
That's a good sign. And these demos aren't just temporary.
You have the option to save them. Once saved, you can keep working on it, and then you choose. Either host it through Drupal Forge, or you can download the site and host it yourself somewhere else.
And it's not just for Drupal CMS sites.
No, definitely not. Darren was clear on that. While it aligns with that vision, Drupal Forge can host pretty much any kind of Drupal site, any distribution, or just plain Drupal.
And the community aspect is key here, as an alternative to, say, one big company controlling the demo experience.
Precisely. That was a driving principle. They wanted it to be community-driven from the start, avoiding a single corporate entity controlling that first impression of Drupal modules or distributions.
So how does it work technically? What's under the hood?
The front end, DrupalForge.org itself, is built on Drupal 10 using web forms pretty heavily for managing templates, user signups, that kind of thing.
Okay, using Drupal to build Drupal tools. Makes sense.
Then when you, say, request a demo site, the web form submits that data to a backend system called DevPanel.
DevPanel. We've heard about that before, haven't we?
Yeah, it came up in a previous talk in Drupal, I think. It's a separate product, not open source itself, but it provides all the tooling for actually managing the hosting, deploying the sites, handling the infrastructure.
So DevPanel does the heavy lifting of spinning up and managing the actual sites.
Exactly. Drupal Forge got a free license from DevPanel to use their platform for this community project. And the underlying hosting infrastructure they're currently using is DigitalOcean.
Okay. Drupal web forms, front end, DevPanel orchestration, DigitalOcean hosting. Got it. What about costs if someone wants to go beyond the demo?
There are two main models they discussed. First, an agency model. You can bring your own hosting or they facilitate it. Costs are like $200, $500, or $1,000 a month. But that's for unlimited sites.
Unlimited sites. Okay, interesting for agencies or freelancers managing multiple clients.
Right. And the other model is more standard per site hosting. Ranges from maybe $20 up to $200 a month, depending on the resources needed.
And crucially, they mentioned these prices are designed with reseller margins in mind.
Yes, that's a key part of the vision, which we can dig into more. Oh, and importantly, unlimited team members are included in the pricing.
Good to know. What about trying it before committing? Is there a free trial?
Yep. The instant demos are free. If you save a site, you can keep it and work on it for up to a month, extending the trial. You only need to pay if you want to make it truly live by adding a custom domain.
So play around for free, pay when you want to go live with your own domain. Seems fair.
If you don't purchase or add a domain after the trial period, the site eventually gets cleaned up.
What if someone needs really specific hosting? Maybe something beyond the standard DigitalOcean setup. Any flexibility there?
Right now, the options are based on that dev panel DigitalOcean stack. But Darren O did say, because it's community-driven, they're open to adding more options.
Yeah.
It depends on community interest and, well, someone stepping up to help build that integration.
So potential for the future, but maybe limited today. What about local development, DDEV integration?
Yeah, they talked about that. The integration isn't quite a seamless push-pull between local DDEV and the cloud environment yet.
Okay, so what is the DDEV compatibility?
It's more about workflow. The backups Drupal Forge creates are DDEV compatible. So you can download a backup, spin it up locally with DDEV, do your work, and then you need to get those changes back up.
So no magic DDEV push to Forge?
Not currently. The backups are stored in Amazon S3, but there's no direct API for that live push-pull yet. They mentioned exploring maybe running DDEV inside a container connected to a remote Docker daemon as a future possibility.
Okay, so workarounds exist, but it's not fully integrated cloud to local sync.
Got it.
We mentioned it's not just Drupal CMS. What can you install?
Quite a range, actually. Different Drupal distributions, vanilla Drupal core versions, including technically Drupal 7, though they really don't recommend that for obvious reasons.
Why? It's security.
Plus, contributed demos. They mentioned Backdrop CMS, Civic CRM, the Umami demo profile.
Oh, cool. So community projects beyond just Drupal core modules.
Yeah, and pre-built templates, too, like for government sites or even Drupal camps. And a big recent thing is that anyone can now turn a site they've built in their dev panel workspace into a shareable Forge template.
That sounds powerful. And this term templates, it feels very aligned with where Drupal seems to be heading generally.
It does. Darren acknowledged Forge's work on templates, kind of predated the big community push, but he hopes maybe their early work influenced the direction a bit. They had talked to the DA about it.
Why specifically offer templates for Drupal camps, like Mid-Camp or Florida Drupal Camp? What was the thinking there?
It's about showcasing possibilities and lowering the barrier, instead of starting with a blank Drupal site, which can be intimidating.
You get a fully built, good-looking example site.
Exactly. It inspires people, shows them what Drupal can do visually, and it's a practical starting point for other event organizers. Much more engaging.
Makes total sense. Show, don't just tell. So if I have a great site I want to share as a template, how do I do that?
The process sounds pretty straightforward. You sign up on DrupalForge.org, get a free dev panel workspace. Build or import your site there, customize it.
Okay.
Then there's a form you fill out on Drupal Forge. That triggers an automated process.
What does the process do?
It creates a GitHub repository for your site's configuration and code, and it builds a Docker image. Those two things together become the template available on Drupal Forge.
Nice. And the Drupal Forge platform itself, the website part, is open source.
Yes, the core platform running DrupalForge.org is open source. You can find it on GitHub.
But the back end, DevPanel and DigitalOcean, those aren't.
Correct. Those are proprietary components. Darren did mention that having a fully locally runnable version of the entire stack is on the roadmap. But right now, running it locally means running the Drupal site part, not the dev panel deployment part.
So contributing something like new hosting options would mean working with the dev panel integration for now?
Seems like it. But he sounded very open to guiding community members who wanted to tackle that. He really emphasized wanting Forge to help fill the gap for affordable hosting, especially for freelancers and smaller sites.
And that ties into the reseller model, right? Enabling others to sell these sites.
Exactly. The vision is that agencies or freelancers can use Forge as a backend. They set their own prices, bundle their own services, and sell sites through their own websites, with Forge handling the provisioning.
So Forge is the platform, not necessarily the direct seller in that scenario.
Right. It distinguishes Forge, selling ready-made sites, from DevPanel, the underlying site management tech.
How does Forge keep up with Drupal's own evolution, like Composer, recipes?
They seem committed to following best practices. Darren said they're already using Composer and recipes, so they plan to just adopt whatever becomes the standard way of building Drupal sites.
What about DNS and domains? Often a sticking point.
Currently, Forge doesn't buy domains, no. You buy your domain elsewhere.
Okay.
But then you can easily point that domain to your live Forge site through the dev panel interface. They acknowledge that integrating domain purchasing could be a future improvement, especially for resellers.
Yeah, that would streamline it. They even floated the idea of AI utility templates that might not need a domain.
Yeah, an intriguing side note, maybe some specific AI tools built on Drupal that function without a custom domain.
Okay, let's look ahead. What's on the Drupal Forge roadmap? What's coming soon?
Some cool stuff. An AI demo is imminent, apparently using limited use OpenAI keys so people can experiment.
Interesting. What else?
There's an existing, more resource-heavy experience builder demo you can find in Darren's user space. Also, a dedicated Drupal Starshot template.
Starshot template to help contribute to the Drupal CMS initiative.
Exactly, making it easier to spin up an environment and contribute directly to Starshot, all within Forge.
That could be really impactful for lowering contribution barriers.
Totally. They also want to create embeddable launch widgets.
Launch widgets.
Yeah, little buttons or forms you can put on, say, a modules project page, or even in banner ads. Clicking it would launch a Forge demo.
Driving traffic and potentially revenue directly back to maintainers.
That's the idea. Plus, exploring an alternative to Drupal Pod using browser extensions in Forge for cloud-based contribution workflows.
And for the resellers.
A full checkout system is on the roadmap. This would let resellers set their prices, handle payments via Stripe Connect, and automate the revenue sharing.
Okay, let's talk about that revenue sharing. How's that split supposed to work?
The plan is, when a site is sold via a reseller using Forge, some revenue first covers Forge's own hosting costs for that site.
Makes sense.
Then the rest is split automatically between the reseller, the Drupal Association, and the designated maintainers of the template or components used. The exact percentages are still being finalized, using Stripe Connect to manage the payouts.
That sounds like a potentially powerful model for sustainability. How is Forge funded right now?
Primarily sponsored by Dev Panel, which is crucial. But they're also getting growing support from individual sponsors via Open Collective and some event sponsorships.
If listeners want to help, beyond donating money, what can they do?
Lots of ways. Help with the vendor catalog project, develop the reseller ecosystem, marketing help, grant writing assistance.
Contributing more site templates seems like a big one too.
Definitely. Contributing new templates, or even just helping maintain and improve the existing ones. Donating hosting resources was also mentioned as a possibility.
And that underlying dev panel tool, it can work with other hosts, right? If they have SSH and Docker?
Technically, yes.
Yeah.
But seamless integration with big platforms like Pantheon or Equia would need specific collaboration with those companies.
Got it. How can people follow along or get involved directly?
There's a weekly Zoom meeting. It gets announced in the Drupal Forge Slack channel. Good place to connect.
And it's worth remembering the history Forge started as a separate nonprofit, the Ops Association.
Right. That was because of some initial hurdles getting full alignment with Starshot leadership and the DA, partly around concerns over hosted trials and relationships with existing hosting partners.
But the door isn't completely closed on closer integration in the future.
No. Darren suggested that strong community advocacy for an open contribution platform like Forge could potentially lead to closer ties down the road.
And addressing that dev panel dependency perception.
Yeah, he stressed you can deploy to any Docker SSH host now, hinting at a more back-end agnostic future potentially, with connectors to different platforms.
They mentioned a really interesting use case too, a major hosting provider exploring using Forge.
Yeah, for letting their own users test Git branches using a cloud IDE experience, like VS Code running in the browser, connected directly to the container for that branch.
Whoa. So you could edit code live in the cloud container for a specific branch and see the changes instantly.
Exactly. Edit code, see the site update, commit changes right from that cloud VS Code interface. Pretty powerful development workflow.
Sounds like it. It's clear Darren and the team are proud of what they've built.
Absolutely. He expressed a lot of gratitude for Dev Panel sponsorship, making it possible, and confirmed Forge's nonprofit status under the Ops Association.
And that Ops Association might even help other open source communities in the future.
Yeah, potential there too, if other communities need a similar marketplace model.
Okay, this has been incredibly insightful. Both ECA VBO and Drupal Forge seem like really significant developments.
For sure. ECA VBO offers serious power for bulk operations without code, and Drupal Forge is this really innovative platform approach to building, sharing, hosting, and funding Drupal sites. It's all about boosting community collaboration.
Definitely things for you, our listener, to check out, depending on what you need, whether it's streamlining site management or getting involved in this new platform.
We really encourage you to explore them further.
So here's something to chew on after our deep dive. How could platforms like Drupal Forge genuinely change how people adopt and develop with Drupal in the next few years? Especially for individuals or smaller teams, could this really lower the barrier to entry and contribution?
That's a great question to ponder.
If you have thoughts on that or any questions about this deep dive, get in touch with the Talking Drupal team. They're at Talking Drupal on social media.
Or email show@talkingdrupal.com, and the Drupal Slack channel is #TalkingDrupal.
You can find out more about their events, newsletter, and Patreon support at talkingdrupal.com.
And if you want to connect with the folks from the discussion, Darren O is Darren O on Drupal.org and Slack. Kathy Beck is kbeck303 on socials, kbeck@umthink.com.
John Percozzi is Percozzi.com. John Percozzi online works at epam.com. And Nick Laughlin is usually NextFan online.
Great folks to connect with.
Well, thanks for diving deep with us today. We hope this gave you some valuable insights and maybe some inspiration.
Definitely check out the resources and projects we talked about. A lot's happening in the Drupal space.
Okay, we're done. To close off this podcast, I just wanted to remind you that this brief was a fully AI-generated summary, and we take no credit for the original content. If you want to learn more, then check out the source. This podcast is produced by the team at Drupal Forge. Drupal Forge is the new #1 open-source development and hosting platform. It has all the functionality of the expensive platforms, but at very affordable prices. If you're looking for a new hosting provider, contact us for a demo before you get locked in. And if you like this podcast, hit subscribe, post a link on social media, and recommend it to 2 friends. That's it. See you next time. Bye for now.